He did not leave at dawn. That was the entire fact of it, and Alina Voss stood in the kitchen doorway for 11 full seconds before she let herself understand it. The transport window had opened at 600. It closed, according to the notice pinned to the refrigerator in his own careful, slightly too formal handwriting, at 6:20. It was 6:41 now, and his jacket was still on the back of the chair. Not folded. Not packed. Slung the way he always slung it, one sleeve inside out, because he had never once in 14 months learned to hang a jacket the way a person who was leaving would hang it. She had expected an empty house. She had rehearsed the empty house for 3 weeks, had practiced, in the shower, in the car, at her desk at the consulate. The specific quality of quiet a house makes when someone is gone from it permanently rather than just for the day. She had gotten good at imagining it. She had gotten good, in fact, at almost everything about the leaving except the part where it actually happened, because that part had never once, in 3 weeks of rehearsal, cooperated with her. She had not imagined this instead. The coffee maker ticking as it cooled, one mug out, and Kes Ithar sitting at her kitchen table in yesterday's shirt, looking at his own hands like they had done something without asking him first. "You missed the window," she said. It came out flatter than she meant it. "I did not miss it. He did not look up. I watched it close." The notice on the refrigerator had been a courtesy. Under Weierli protocol, a departing liaison did not need to leave a written explanation for a civilian host. The transport manifest itself was the explanation. Filed, time-stamped, irreversible, understood by every party without a single additional word. He had written the note anyway in English, because he'd said once that a schedule felt less true if no one but a machine had read it. She used to think that was a translation quirk, a habit left over from some earlier posting where precision had mattered more than warmth. She had since learned it was just Kes. It had always just been Kes. She sat down across from him, not because she had decided to. Her legs simply stopped being interested in the conversation happening anywhere else in the house. "They'll log this as desertion," she said. "They will log it as a missed rotation. Desertion requires combat status. I have never once in 14 months been anywhere near combat status." A pause. "I checked. Twice, actually. The second time was mostly to see if the answer would change." "That's not the point, and you know it's not the point." "No," he agreed, "it isn't." He finally looked up at her, and there was something in his face she had not seen before, not fear exactly, and not the careful diplomatic neutrality he wore for negotiations, but something closer to a man doing long division in his head and arriving, for the first time, at a number he actually liked. She found the first thing an hour later, looking for a reason to leave the room. His travel case was in the hall closet, exactly where it had been for a week, packed, fully packed. Sealed even, the biometric latch already keyed to the transport authorities system, ready to be handed off the moment he stepped through the gate. She had watched him pack it 3 days ago. She remembered thinking, with a specific, private grief, that he packed the way people pack when they have done it many times and expect to do it many times again. Efficient, unsentimental, nothing wasted, nothing left behind that might make the next departure harder than this one. Which meant the case being ready was not new information. The new information was that it had not moved, not an inch. It sat in the closet exactly the way she had left it in her memory, dust-free because the case itself repelled dust, useless now in a way that felt, standing there, oddly like a small kindness he had done for her without telling her he was doing it. She found the second thing on his data slate, left open on the counter, an act so uncharacteristic that she almost didn't look. Because Kes did not leave things open, ever, a habit she'd once teased him about and he'd once explained. Without apparent irony, was simply good practice for a species with no natural instinct for privacy. A species that had learned the hard way what it cost to assume a closed door meant a closed conversation. The slate showed a draft, unsent, addressed to the Consular Oversight Board, 3 lines long and then nothing, like he had started a sentence and then decided the sentence wasn't the point either. Request status. Reassignment, civilian liaison, indefinite term, planetside. Grounds, that was where it stopped. Grounds, nothing. As if he had known exactly what he wanted and had no idea, after 14 months of translating other people's reasons for a living, how to write down one of his own. She almost laughed at that, standing alone in the kitchen. The most articulate man she had ever met, undone by a single blank field on a bureaucratic form. She found the third thing without meaning to. She was not looking for it, she told herself later. She had simply gone back into the kitchen to put the mug in the sink. and there on the counter beside it was the small folded star chart he kept in his jacket pocket, the one he used to orient himself when he first arrived and had never quite stopped carrying out of habit, long after the habit had stopped being necessary. It was open. Someone, him, had circled something on it in the pale ink viola used for personal notation, not official, the kind of mark meant to be private, meant for no one's eyes but his own. She recognized the coordinates without needing to check them against anything. It was not a system. It was not a route. It was her street. She sat down on the closed lid of the closet's storage bench, chart still in her hand, and did not move for a while. At 900, the call came. She knew it was the call before he answered it, because his posture changed the way it changed in negotiation rooms. The specific stillness of someone converting a feeling into a position. The same stillness she had watched from across a table a dozen times before, and never once, until now, been on the same side of. He took it standing, facing the window, and she made herself stay in the room, because if she left now, she would spend the rest of her life wondering what she had been too afraid to hear. The voice on the other end spoke via formal register, which the translation implant rendered into English a half-second behind the original, so that she heard the words twice, once in the alien cadence, clipped and precise, built for record-keeping rather than comfort, and once flattened into a language built for apology instead of hierarchy. The window has closed. This is now a matter of record. Kes said nothing for 4 seconds. Alina had learned over 14 months that 4 seconds of silence from a Vierli negotiator was not hesitation. It was the sound of someone choosing which true thing to say first, out of several that were all, technically, equally true. "Then record it," he said. "I am not returning on this rotation. You understand the consequence is reclassification. Not disciplinary, administrative. You would cease to hold envoy status. 11 years of accumulated seniority reset to civilian baseline. I understand it. You have held that status for 11 years, Envoy Ithar. Longer than any liaison currently active on this assignment. Longer, I believe, than any liaison in the program's history has held it before requesting reassignment." "I am aware of how long I have held it," Kes said. "I would like it noted that I am choosing, with full information, to no longer be someone who leaves at dawn." There was a pause on the other end that the implant did not translate, because there was nothing in it to translate. A silence with no formal register attached. The kind two people share when the official conversation has quietly ended, and a private one has taken its place without either of them announcing the change. Then more quietly, almost off the formal register entirely, the voice of someone who had known him a long time and had run out of official things to say. "They will ask me why. I will need to write something down." Kes looked at Alina across the kitchen, and for the first time all morning, something in his face stopped being careful. "Write that the mission was successful," he said. "Write that I found something the survey team did not have a category for, and I am staying to study it properly." He ended the call before she could ask him what he meant, though she already knew, and he already knew that she knew, and there was a specific mercy in the fact that neither of them said it out loud right away. Some things landed better as an unspoken agreement than as a sentence either person had to be brave enough to finish first. Instead, he picked the jacket up off the chair. Finally, 39 minutes after the fact should have mattered, and did not put it on. He held it the way a person holds something they are deciding what to do with now that it no longer means what it used to mean, turning it once in his hands, as if checking it for a weight that had changed overnight. "The reassignment request," Alina said. "Grounds nothing you didn't finish it." "I know what I want," he said. "I have never had to justify it to a board before. Wanting has never been an approved category on the form. There is a field for operational necessity. There is a field for medical accommodation. There is, I checked this morning at some length, no field for a kitchen table. So what are you going to write?" He considered this for longer than the question deserved, in the way she had come to recognize as his particular kind of care. The same care he'd once used translating a piece. Accord's fourth clause for 9 straight hours, because one word could not mean 2 different things in 2 different languages without someone, somewhere, eventually going to war over the gap. "I'm going to write that I missed a transport window on purpose," he said, "and that I would like the board to consider this the most competent decision of my career. Not the bravest. Not the most romantic, though I understand that will be the version the file assistant summarizes it as. The most competent. I have spent 11 years making correct decisions under pressure. This is the first one I made without any pressure at all, and it is still, I believe, correct. There was a version of this morning where she said none of what came next, and let the relief of him staying be the whole of it. And she considered, briefly, taking that version instead, because it was easier and she had never been someone who needed things to be hard on principle. "I need you to know something," she said instead, "before you finish that request." He set the jacket down on the table between them. Carefully, the way he set down anything he suspected was about to matter more than its size suggested. "Tell me, I didn't rehearse the empty house because I thought I could handle it better that way." Her voice did not do anything dramatic. It just kept going, the way true things tend to when you finally let them out of the order you'd planned. "I rehearsed it because some part of me thought if I got good enough at imagining you gone, it would hurt less when you actually left. I have been quietly preparing to lose you for 3 weeks, Kess, every single day, and I never once told you, because telling you felt like admitting I didn't think you'd choose this." "I did not know that. I know you didn't. I made sure you didn't. That was its own kind of cowardice, I think, dressed up as not wanting to pressure you." She looked at the jacket instead of at him because it was easier to say the rest of it to an inanimate object than to his face. "So when I say I'm glad you stayed, I need you to understand it's not the easy kind of glad. It's the kind that comes with 3 weeks of grief I have to figure out what to do with now, because it turns out I built a whole private funeral for something that didn't die." He was quiet for the length of time it took her, finally, to look back up at him. "Then let me help you take it apart," he said. "Slowly, if that is what it requires. I have some experience dismantling things that were built to be permanent. It is, as it happens, the actual job." It was not a grand line. It did not fix in one sentence 3 weeks of quiet grief she had never spoken aloud until now. But it was specific, and it was his, and it was offered the way he offered everything that mattered to him. Carefully, without exclamation, like a fact he intended to keep being true tomorrow and the day after that. By noon the coffee had gone cold twice, and neither of them had moved to reheat it. The travel case was still sealed in the hall closet, and she understood without being told that it would stay that way, not unpacked in a gesture, not thrown open in some dramatic renunciation of the life it represented, just left, the way you leave a door you no longer need to walk back through, because leaving it shut costs nothing and proves nothing and simply is what it is. She thought about the star chart, the pale ink circle around her street, drawn some private night she hadn't known about, by someone orienting himself not toward a system or a route, but toward a fixed point he intended to keep coming back to. The way sailors on old maps used to mark a single reliable star among a sky full of ones that moved. "How long have you known," she asked, "that you weren't getting on that transport?" "Since the window opened," he said. "I watched the clock instead of the gate. I wanted to know what it would feel like to choose the second hand over the schedule." A pause, the specific Kess pause that meant the next sentence had been sitting in him a long time before finding permission to exist. "It felt like the only accurate thing I have done in 11 years of very accurate work. Everything else I have ever reported back was a translation of something someone else felt. This was mine." She did not have anything to reframe that into. She did not need to. He had already done the reframing himself, in a kitchen, in yesterday's shirt, with a jacket in his hands and a request unfinished on a slate across the room. And for the first time in 3 weeks of rehearsing an empty house, Alina let herself stop rehearsing anything at all. The jacket went back on the chair, not folded, slung one sleeve inside out exactly the way it always had been, because some things, once you decide to keep them, you stop trying to improve. He was supposed to leave at dawn. He unpacked nothing. He apologized for nothing. He simply stayed and began that same afternoon, learning what a Tuesday looked like when no clock in it was counting down to anything at all. When the only appointment left on the calendar was an ordinary one, the kind that did not require a manifest, a window, or a version of himself that watched the door instead of the person standing in front of it.